Now we'll add the cables to the JetXpert system. You may find it useful to reference the included wiring diagram throughout this process. First, we'll connect the cables to the JetXpert itself. There are 3 connections here. One between the LED strobe and the strobe box, one between the camera and the FireWire hub, and one between the camera and the strobe box. First, we'll connect the LED strobe to the strobe box. That's this cable here. One side is labeled LED, and the other side is labeled strobe. We'll take the LED side of the cable and plug it into the LED. There are a number of small nubs here if you look at the end of the connector. The largest nub goes to the top. This connector should simply slide in and click into place. If it doesn't slide in, it's not oriented properly. Don't spin it in order to try to get the proper orientation, or you may risk damaging a pin. The other side connects to the strobe box. There's a nub here in this connector as well, only one. That goes towards the top. Now we'll connect the camera to the FireWire hub. For this, I prefer to use the short FireWire 800 cable. There are 2 places for this cable to connect into the back of the camera. Either one will work. The other side goes into the top of the FireWire hub. Now let's add the connection between the camera and the strobe box. Here's the cable to do that. One side is labeled camera trigger and the other is labeled camera I/O. The side labeled camera I/O goes to the back of the camera. As before, the largest nub goes to the top, and the connection should slide in and click. The other side is connected to the port on the strobe box labeled camera trigger. There's a small slot on the connector that goes towards the top. Next, let's add the connection between the FireWire hub and the workstation. That's the long FireWire 800 cable here. Connect it to the left side of the hub, right next to the hole for the power. And to the FireWire port on the workstation. Let's add the power to the hub next. That's this power supply here. Simply plug it into an outlet and to the hub. Next, we add the connection between the strobe box and the workstation. That's this USB connector here. One side goes into the strobe box and the other the workstation. It's best to use the rightmost USB port on the workstation. Now let's add the firing clock cable. This cable is labeled firing clock on both sides. One side is a BNC connector, and the other side is designed to connect to the strobe box. As before, this connector's small slot goes towards the top. The BNC side goes to the print controller. It accepts a 5-volt TTL trigger signal. Now let's add power to the strobe box. We have 2 parts to do this. One's a power cable, and the other is the power supply itself. We connect the power supply to the strobe box at the power port. Connect the power cable to the power supply and plug the power cable in. You'll notice that one side of the power supply is a switch. This is how we control power to the strobe box. Now let's add power to the workstation itself. Now let's plug in the software dongle. The software dongle needs to be plugged in order for the software to run. It's best to plug this into the next rightmost USB port on the back of the workstation.